Thank you all so much for being here.
And thanks for the warm welcome.
Of course, absolutely. It's not just like when you release a movie, it's an event. Like, we wait a few years for you to do this, and I don't mean to, beg you to work faster, but
please do. I want to work faster.
Great, work faster.
Let's get to work.
We're working on something right now.
Whenever I have people as accomplished as any of you, I actually love to go back to the beginning and ask, what was your first job in this business? Like, did you start in a mail room, or the first thing you wrote, or the first time you felt you could call yourself a filmmaker?
I'm going to answer that first.
You go.
I was an extra in a spaghetti western that was shot in Spain. I was 16 years old, my first job.
Did you think you wanted to be an actor, or?
I thought for a moment that I could be an actor, and then in college I studied acting. I realized made two important decisions. One was that I wasn't any good, but more importantly, I realized I didn't want it badly enough to make myself good. So I said, all right, what can I do as a failed actor? So I tried producing.
He's in Dr. Zhivago, by the way. He touches Julie Christie's arm as she's leaving a party, right?
That's exactly.
Are you being serious?
I can't believe you remember that. I'd forgotten it.
You made an impression. You made a very profound impression.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Sorry, David, you have to top that now.
I can't, but my first gig was, this is my second career, and I did something before this, and I kind of quit into nothing because I couldn't do what I was doing before, and I just wanted to be a writer so badly. So I ended up getting my first gig was a job on a show, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, a show on Nickelodeon called The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Of course.
Anybody remember that? So it was me, Viscardi McRobb, and Joe Stillman, the four of us writing that show, and it was just a revelation. It was so great because they had like Madonna was on it, and like REM was a kid show on Nickelodeon. It was this really insurgent, fantastic kid show. So I feel really fortunate to have that be my first gig.
Wow. For you?
So I was at UCLA Film School, and while at UCLA Film School, I got a job through a friend in Omaha who had a nephew who owned a business in Woodland Hills called Keepsake Video. And I shot and edited weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and wedding anniversaries.
Wow, that's amazing. What great practice though, because you were actually working in the business. You were directing and editing.
Yeah, and witnessing, real life.
Yeah, that's amazing. Probably doesn't sound very glamorous now, but I think that's incredible.
Similar, when later in film school, I was a catering waiter.
Really?
For years, and also you get to be a fly on the wall in these events in Los Angeles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now here you all are with the Holdovers. It's such a beautiful movie, and again, such a great slice of humanity. You're obviously known for your funny, unique, insightful films about the human experience, but this is different in that you actually didn't write this screenplay. But what was sort of the initial spark or idea that caused you to pair with David?
I had the idea of this, the premise, for about a dozen years, and had done nothing with it. It was on my list. And then some years ago, I received a TV pilot set in a boarding school, contemporary story. Wait, it was set in 1980.
Yeah,
but I want to reread that, by the way.
Read that pilot. It's pretty good. It's all right.
Anyway, I didn't want to make it, but so I called him up and I said, hey man, I just read your script. I think it's really good. I don't want to do it, but would you consider writing something in that same world for me, a feature film? And he said yes. That's how we met.
Immediately.
Yeah, I was going to ask, was it an instant yes?
I thought it was a joke. I thought it was my buddy Bob messing with me. He would call me up. He'd occasionally be like, David Hemingson, Francis Ford Coppola.
I want to, we've told this story a couple times.
The truth.
We've told this story a couple times, but I want to, at some point, I just want to say, he agreed to do it on spec.
Really?
For a minute, we thought,
Who here wouldn't work with him on spec?
Yeah, but you never
right?
know how
Am I
it's
right?
going to work. No, but for a minute, it's like, well, should we try to set this up and get you paid and give it some validity? And it's like, and it kind of didn't work out with that one financier studio we approached, and then he's like, "Fuck it, I got some money. We can." So thanks again for doing that. Thank you again for doing that.
You have
it
been
can always
paid,
go.
right?
I wanted to honor the time
paid.
he was putting into it, and
That's
I'm so
amazing.
glad it paid off.
Every single moment of it, honestly, in the sense, it's just the truth. Every single moment of it was a great pleasure. I mean, you get to work with this filmmaker, so it was great. And it was like going to film school on his back, because to kind of keep up with him and to understand him, I had to do some serious research. And Cinephile Video, guys, Who knows Cinephile Video? Corner Santa Monica and Sawtell. JP and Greg, greatest video store in the world. Film school.
Used to work there. That's crazy. I did,
You did?
yeah.
I love that
worked
store.
there for a while. That's insane. I do want to ask you, though, because you obviously have an extensive career in television. Had you ever written a feature screenplay before?
Yeah, I mean, I've written a couple features, but you know, they were not. I think sold one in like 2009, but it was sort of like I did a lot of TV. You know, I've been a showrunner for a while. I've been in TV for like 27 years. So like I was paying the mortgage, and when this opportunity kind of came along, I'm like, absolutely. But I knew I had to up my game, and that's why I'm talking about actually doing the research. And he's a phenomenal collaborator. I mean, we'd have these tremendous conversations, and I feel like I got educated, and I got to write the movie at the same time, and it was kind of a dream come true, to be totally honest with you. You know.
What's that pilot doing now? Because I say spin-off.
I think it's possible. It's just sitting on my shelf. I don't know. We'll see.
I'd like to reread it, by
It's
the way.
good, man. You like
No, I know
5
it's
years
good.
ago.
I just, no,
Yeah.
but I
I'll
know
bet
it's
you
good. I
could
just
sell
don't
it now.
remember it.
Yeah.
Probably. Anybody want to buy this pilot?
Mark, you've previously collaborated with Alexander, and I'm curious, is it a matter of, you know, whatever he's doing, you're interested? Are you waiting for that call? Or when did he first start to approach you about the idea for the Holdovers?
Well, I've known Alexander for some time. We'd never worked together, but we run into each other at events. And then we started to develop actually a short story, a Spanish language short story. We both speak Spanish. And it was going really well, and Alexander had told me about this movie called Downsizing, and asked me if I wanted to produce it. It was, once again, like you, my yes was probably quicker than yours. So, and then we obviously keep in touch, talk all the time, and started to tell me about this one. I never met David, but as soon as I read it, I knew I had to be a part of it.
I mean, we have to talk about this amazing ensemble because every role is so perfectly cast, and sometimes with brand new faces. But obviously, I think everyone's been waiting for you to reunite with Paul Giamatti. Were you just waiting for the perfect role?
Yes.
And was this written for him?
Yes.
So, David, you knew when you were writing it that did you have Paul's
Oh yeah, I mean, it was
voice
like a
in-
threshold conversation. Right around the whole 1970 of it all, we had a kind of a threshold conversation about what year we sit in, and then there was a tonal thing, and I think the third thing we talked about was, he's like, how do you feel about Paul Giamatti? I'm like, I love Paul Giamatti. He's like, would you like to, we should absolutely do that. So I ran toward that immediately, yeah.
And named the character Paul.
Named him Paul. And the weird thing is, Paul's dad and my dad knew each other in college, which is the really weird thing. And I found out from his dad when I was graduating from college. So it's the
Did
crazy
your dad
thing.
go to Yale, too?
Yeah, he went to Yale.
So you're second generation Yale.
Yeah.
Some people would say it's like dangerous to write with an actor in mind, but you obviously knew he was going to do this.
Yeah, and he's like, I can't think of anything he can't do. He's sort of like he's like a Swiss Army knife. He's just got so many gears, and he definitely so many attributes. And this felt like it was his wheelhouse. I was a huge student of Alexander's work. I kind of saturated myself in his movies before I even met him. So I was sort of like, I love Sideways. I mean, who doesn't love Sideways? So I'm like, you see him do that. I'm like, well, I'm pretty certain. And he said to you, didn't he? Said, I know these guys because of his background.
Paul, yeah, when he read the script, Paul, a product himself of Choate and Yale, said, yeah, I knew these guys.
Yeah, and I suspected he might because we're both from New Haven. We were both born in New Haven, and as it turns out, our fathers knew each other. But it's like I kind of had an inkling that he might get it, and he'd get it immediately.
Who else could have? I can't think. I'm hard pressed to think who else could have played the part. Someone to me the other day said, in his prime, Richard Dreyfuss could have played it. Well, okay. I think like Charles Lawton maybe could have played it. I mean, each one would have put a different spin on it.
So you
But
knew you had Paul.
contemporarily, I don't know.
I can't think of a single person who could have done this.
I don't know.
You knew you had Paul, who's amazing, but this film also hinges on the casting of Dominic Sessa, who, as soon as I saw this movie, I wanted to learn everything about him, and I can't because apparently this is his first professional job.
He had never even been in a short film before. Nothing, zero. He was an actual senior at Deerfield Academy in Deerfield, Mass. When we shot, playing a junior at basically Deerfield Academy.
Had he done school plays or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay,
He's
so
big,
he auditioned
big
for
ham
it.
bone in
He was like a
the,
star of the drama
in the
department.
theater department. And he had, wanted to be an actor. He's now, he was a senior when we shot. He was applying to NYU and Carnegie Mellon and Brandeis or whatever, those undergrad schools that have such good acting programs. So he was on his way.
Yeah.
But anyway, now he's really got a career.
How-
I got a movie out of the deal, and he got a career out of the deal.
How many people do you estimate you saw for this role?
I personally did not see, I saw maybe 70 or 80, but the casting director and her staff saw 800.
That's, I mean, 70 and 80 is a lot too, I have to say.
Well, you don't watch the whole audition.
It's true, the secret's
It's so
out.
nice, you watch about 15 seconds, like, yeah, next, the cane comes out.
Was there a moment where you knew you had something special with him when you were watching that tape, something he did or that caught your attention?
He had the hair.
Hmm. No, I know exactly what you mean.
If he hadn't had the hair, we saw, especially Susan Shopmaker, the casting director, she saw it because she had been in the room with him. I just saw a tape the first time. And she had driven out to Deerfield from New York and auditioned him. And she said, he's really got something special. And just look at him, and there's something in there. But the trouble with his first couple of auditions was he had never auditioned for anything before. So he thought he kind of had to perform. And cinema doesn't like performing, especially if you maybe make the wrong choice. So Susan was like, no, just stay with him. Let's beat that performative stuff out of him for a minute. And so we brought him in probably 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and the last time finally with Paul Giamatti, and got him just relax. We see you inside, we can see through you, and you've got something. But I didn't realize the degree to which he had something, which was a fully formed, from the head of Zeus, film actor, not just actor, but film actor. And, Paul and I were conspiring to, well, let's help the kid out. And, you're Mr. Experienced film actor, and you can help keep him relaxed and give him tips and so forth. He didn't really need any tips.
Really?
Once he sort of got we pushed him into the wave, and then he just surfed.
What's remarkable?
You could just do anything.
Arguably his most impressive scene or hardest scene is right after he sees his father and in the restaurant, and it's a long, continuous shot on him when he talks about, quite frankly, opens up his heart and soul. That's the first take that we have in
take
here.
one.
Wow. That's amazing.
Knew it perfectly, and that's his performance. I look at it every time, and just my jaw drops.
However, we had auditioned with that scene.
Yeah, the big monologue.
So he was very well rehearsed in it by the time. I mean, it's still got to be fresh on the day you shoot and everything, but we had been over and over and over that monologue many times.
I actually, I want to point out, because this movie not only feels like a movie from the 70s, I mean, well, it's a movie set in the 70s, but it feels like it's in the 70s, like even the pops and the crackles and everything. And I do want to point out that, it's a period piece, you have a pretty sizable cast, and you're doing this on an independent film budget. How did you make it so authentic? And then maybe this is a question for Mark, within that budget?
Honey,
first
what
for
would you say?
Alexander.
Well, independent film budget. So it was low by American standards. We're not supposed to say how much. It was low by American standards, but not so low that we couldn't do anything. But I've never had a huge, downsizing was an exception, but all the other films I've made have been, low budget by American standards, high by European standards or Asian standards, but by, I did Nebraska 10 years ago. That was like a $13 million budget, chump change for these people. Sideways was 15 and a half, 16. Descendants, George Clooney, Hawaii, still like low 20s.
Wow.
So I've never had the big, he budgets.
And Schmidt was pretty low too?
Schmidt was 32 million, but half of that was Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
So below the line was still, 15, 16 million.
Wow.
And having to build sets because Nicholson only shoots 8 hours, so you have to do a lot of stuff on stage, and oh man. Anyway, total que, the discipline it's taught me over the years is precise camera placement, and then doing is like really being as disciplined as I can. I mean, that's the beauty of having low budgets, is it forces a type of, I mean, I hope a type of elegance, but certainly discipline about staging as much as you can in each shot.
You also know, I must say, you also know exactly what you want. I watched you very carefully, and like, you know, we didn't blow our days, and the vibe on set is really great. I mean, it's a very calm and lovely set to be on. Having been on 27 years of television sets, I can attest to that.
Well, and the other thing too about experience is you think, oh, I've got a low budget, I have to make all my days, and you know, I'm sure many of you work in film. You're allowed 10 hours, and then 12 hours, but you often go to 14 hours. I rarely do more than about 9 or 10 hours.
Really?
In a given day, and that just comes from, to some degree, not always, but sometimes knowing what I want, but also having a good crew. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have good grip and electric, then you can do it.
Yeah.
And if you have good I mean, in this one, that's the good thing too about Dominic Sessa, is he could memorize. I could do oneers. I could do 2, 3, 4 pages of dialogue with him and Paul, especially toward the back half of the film when they're in Boston, like in the liquor store. That's 4 pages of dialogue in one shot, and then on the street afterwards, and after the winning ticket bar scene, you know, when they're walking and talking. To do those in single takes, those you can do. Those shorten your days, but you can do that only if you have the actors who can. You know, a cook is only as good as his or her ingredients. So I had good ingredients.
But I have noticed that like some of our best actors do give their greatest performances under your direction. And I'm curious about your language with actors.
I demand it.
Well, actually, let me ask Mark, because you've worked with so many auteurs like Steven Soderbergh and Clint Eastwood. You've seen people who work with actors. What makes Alexander special?
Let's not compare.
No. So Clint Eastwood and then Alexander Payne.
Yeah, this is a hard one. Actually, not at all, to answer. He is probably the most prepared director and the most self-confident director I've ever worked with. So we know that we're never in question about what we're doing, what's required of us, what it is he needs. Not that he's necessarily easy in terms of the requirements, but you always know what it is he needs to make a scene work. And days that should have taken forever and we should have gone into excessive overtime, he never did. Sometimes we finished early, and consequently, everybody was. It was probably the happiest set I've ever been on.
That is absolutely the truth, yeah.
How did you develop that language with actors?
How do you develop a language with actors? I don't know. And maybe you talk about sort of an early desire to be an actor oneself. So I don't think I'm necessarily I could do a couple of parts, kind of clowny parts. I'm a better clown than actor, I think. But I just sort of know how it should be, given that actor, more or less, certainly the rhythm. And before directing Jack Nicholson, I called up Mike Nichols.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to name drop and say he took an interest in me early on, and he was a friend and just a lovely guy, and befriended a lot of young directors. He was very generous that way. Anyway, before doing About Schmidt, I called him up and I said, "Oh, Mike Nichols, you who have directed Jack Nicholson 3 or 4 times, what advice do you have for me?" And he said, "Oh, that's easy, my boy. Just tell him the truth. Because he's going to smell it on you anyway." And that's something that I've taken with me directing all actors. You know, you take directing classes in film school, and it's like, give them actable verbs, and don't give them line readings, and don't tell them a result. Like, I can't think of all that stuff. I can't think of a great active verb. I sometimes have to say, or I'll say, do it like this. You know, like Charlie Chaplin, the only way he could direct is to act it out for him and then say, imitate me. And you kind of just have to do that. I mean, even Jack Nicholson told me years ago, he goes, don't be afraid to give me a line reading, especially
Yeah.
since you've written it, because it tells me the rhythm you're looking for.
It's a pretty good Jack, by the way.
Well,
No, I've talked to
but
so
you
many
just
actors.
you just tell these people the
Yeah.
truth, and I mean, there's William Wyler famously, who directed more actors to Oscar-winning performance, certainly nominated, but Oscar-winning performances more than any other director to date, didn't know what to tell actors. All he would say is, I don't know, just do it better. The thing is, I don't want to, I'm sorry if this is long-winded.
No, please.
But during action and cut, I'm the audience. I'm sitting in the audience watching the movie. Everybody else is focusing on his or her specialty. Is the hair right? Is the costume right? Is the boom microphone in the right place? Whatever it is. I'm the one watching the movie. So I'm like, cut. I don't buy it. That was too slow, man. Do it faster, or hit that other word, not this one, or something. And you just sort of, I think it just comes from feeling a movie.
Yeah.
But also feeling a movie is the other side of it. Is like, did it feel like a movie? But also, if there were no film equipment here, and this were actually happening, would I believe it?
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel like I'm there with real people doing real things? And so when those two things click in, that it's like, oh, I feel that that's really happening in front of me, and that has the rhythm for a movie, then we can move on.
There's this misnomer that actors don't like line readings, but every actor I've ever spoken to says they actually really do prefer it. They're like, don't give me flowery language, just tell me how to say it.
I'll often tell actors, I don't have a brilliant actable verb for you. Just do it more like this. And the other thing, too, is they always say, don't give results. Why not? I need you to be sad here. How you get there is part of your internal process. In fact, if I try to give you some actable verb, I might screw up whatever you got going on inside you already. So, you don't have to cry. I'm not going to make you have to cry, but I mean, and if they've read the damn script, they know what's going on.
And I think you talk about, like, you have this incredible nose for falsity. Like, do I buy it? And I think, we talk about this a lot, like you sitting in the audience and looking and going, like, almost a documentarian, like, what is the accurate human experience? What resonates as a true human experience? And I think that is borne out in all the performances you get out of these.
Well, yeah, not what's the movie version, what's the real version. Yeah. But then it's weird how the real version intersects with the movie. I don't know how to explain it any better.
I'm so sorry that we're out of time, because I know you all have
We're
to
just
be
getting
somewhere.
started.
I have no place to be.
I brought a sleeping
I
bag.
do want to remind the audience, though, that The Holdovers is going to be in theaters in New York and LA on October 27th before
That's
going
day after tomorrow.
nationwide. Please spread the word. It's such a special film. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thanks for
Thank you
coming, you
all.
guys. We didn't take
Thank
any
you.
questions from the audience.